And a very good evening to you and welcome to today's edition of Politics 101. We are coming off a weekend of high drama in the political front. Of course, we had the long awaited PNC Congress. Some say it was not a full Congress, PNC election for executive, and of course, the main interest was the election for the new leader of the party. And as was generally expected, Aubrey Norton emerged as the leader. The two other contestants, Richard Van West Charles and Joe Harmon, trailing far behind. Norton picking up at some 82% of the votes cast. And what was also important was that there were lots of coattails, meaning that members of his slate were elected in the main. New chairman, a young man, Sherwin Holder, a new first vice president. There is a tie for the second vice president. New treasurer, young man, I think he's about 22 years old, I think. And so we have a brand new slate at the top there. And then when we come down to the 15-person executive, 14 of those positions, and I understand of the 14, 4 of the persons were on Joe Harmon's slate, and 10 of them were on Aubrey Norton's slate, giving Aubrey Norton quite a big lead in the executive of the party. And then the leader of the party, I understand, gets to co-op 5 more members. So he can co-op 5 more. The executive can co-opt 5 more. So it seems as though Aubrey Norton not only won by a wide margin, but he has gotten the executive that he wanted. And so there have been lots of discussions. Would Norton continue to govern as a maximum leader, or would he take a different approach? There is also the question of whether Mr. Harmon would remain as opposition leader, or whether there will be a move to remove him. Whether Aubrey himself would go into parliament, that would mean recalling people and all that stuff. So there's a lot there. So that's a big issue. Norton, of course, said what his top priorities would be in the short run, rebuilding the party, of course, but he says he'll take a hard line on the chairperson at GCOM, seeking a removal, the chief education, the chief elections officer. We also hear him says that he is going to stand in the way of the PPP seeking to raid the National Resource Fund, the oil money, and he's going to go after a new voters list. Those are some of the things that he says would be his priority. Today, we heard the stuff there of his position vis-a-vis the private sector commission and the party's attitude on this leadership for the private sector. So there is a lot there. He also said that he would pursue vigorously the reinvigoration of the Partnership for National Unity and the larger coalition. So those are some of the things that he has put forward as priorities for him. Of course, on the other side of the aisle, commentators who are friendly to the PPP have been saying that Norton his priority should be crossover votes. So they have their priority for Norton. and that he should turn his face against any kind of militancy against the PPP, should go into Parliament and become a very tame and loyal opposition. That's what we are hearing from the pro-PPP commentators on that side. And of course, commentators on Norton's side of the aisle, what some people say people who are to the left of Norton are saying Norton should pay attention to rebuilding the party's relationship with its base. So that's quite a bit. And I have a team tonight which is going to try to tease out some of these questions. We have Dr. Henry Jeffrey, who's been missing in action for quite a while, but he's back. Mr. Christopher Ram, who has become a fixture in recent weeks, and Adam Harris, who was on with a panel of journalists before the election, and he did express some strong views on what he thought at that time would be the outcome of the elections. I want to welcome everybody down. Welcome down to Politics 101. It's a big night. Tonight, of course, we're going to have the panel. And on Thursday night, we're going to have Aubrey Norton himself on for a one-on-one. Before that, we'll have Stanley Ming weighing in on the significance of Norton's election. So we are going to pay attention to that. As we come on tonight, we got news that the Court of Appeal has ruled that it has jurisdiction to hear the appeal of the petition ruling by the Chief Justice. As you remember, the Chief Justice had ruled, she had thrown out one of the petitions by the election petitions I'm talking about, by the coalition, and on a matter of technicality, on the grounds that Mr. Granger, the leader of the list, was late in his submission of documents, and she had thrown it out. The coalition appealed, and the government argument was that on matters of election, the Court of Appeal did not have jurisdiction. Of course, the coalition argued otherwise. And today, the Court of Appeal, in a 2-to-1 ruling, said that it does have jurisdiction. Not been able to listen or read the ruling, so I can't speak to the reasons that they have advanced. But what this means is that if the representative of the PPP list, Mr. Jack Dio, appeals, then the case will have to go to the CCJ for a final determination. If he does not appeal, it means that the case is then thrown back to the High Court for a hearing and determination. That's big news as we come into the program tonight. We're going to be talking, like I said, about Aubrey Norton's election, but since is the news of the moment, I will open this evening by asking our panel for comments on the ruling by the Court of Appeal. First of all, welcome, Dr. Jeffrey. Christopher Ram, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Adam Harris was here with us. He has stepped away for a while, but will be back shortly.
Thank you very much.
Christopher, let me start with you. What do you make of the ruling by the Court of Appeal?
I read about it. I haven't read the details. I think if it ruled on the question of whether it has jurisdiction, that's a different issue from whether it simply means that it is saying that we can hear the case. Now, the Constitution talks about exclusive right of the High Court. So it's interesting that it means that if the Court of Appeal has jurisdiction, then you're right, it can go all the way to the CCJ. because that element of exclusivity of the High Court is not how the Guyana Court of Appeal sees the matter. It's interesting, usual 2-1, and we hope it doesn't get caught up in the politics, but it really is addressed as a matter of law. How quickly it's going to be heard by the Court of Appeal, and then whichever side, I guess, will want to go to the CCJ, and that again we are looking at several months down the road. But it's interesting. Our constitution is being tested, and it's good that the courts are playing their role. They are the arbiter after all. They're one of the certainly the legal guardrails. So let them do their work.
What was your own view of the jurisdiction of the Court of Appeal? Or do you think that there was some exclusivity, or there is exclusivity as far as these elections matters are concerned?
I did think that because, you see, we have to remember that at that stage we did not have the CCJ for one thing, but I thought that the provision that it's the High Court that should deal with it was because of the need to resolve election issues as speedily as possible. But there's always a different opinion, David, and one obviously respects it. It will be interesting to read the full decision before one can make a more informed response. But I am of the view that you believe in the rule of law, the Court of Appeal has ruled, then its judgment must be respected, and the process must take its course.
Dr. Jeffrey, what do you think of the ruling? What's your preliminary thoughts on the ruling?
Well, I always thought, of course, that largely because the CCJ did make the point when we were going there during the 2020 election, that at the end of the day, you should go to election petition that will get to become final, will again perhaps reach the CCJ. And therefore, I have always thought that this matter should not end at the High Court. That was my feeling. Not only because I believe that the High Court was, I can't say wrong, but it should not have allowed a technicality to destroy what I will call the substantive issues of the matter. And therefore, personally, I would like what has happened to happen, for it to go to the next court at least. So from my standpoint, it's good. I believe that the substantive matter should take precedence over these solving issues and all. After all, we're talking about ruling a country and all of that. And to hear that because somebody wasn't served, but then I'm not saying that is legally that the High Court was incorrect. I'm saying that there is a quarrel in legal circles about the precedent that should indeed be given to technicality and substantive issues. So I am pleased that the matter has gone forward, because I see the issue is of massive importance to how we view what the legitimacy and all of that, and how the system will develop. Because this is the issues about people involved in electoral fraud, people that are here and abroad and voting, literature that is supposed to be elsewhere are different in the boxes, some 43 boxes and that sort of thing. We will never deal with the issue of legitimacy in this country until we deal with that matter. And legitimacy and the nature of the manipulation of elections that I believe has to be solved if we are going to go forward. I am not here accusing anybody of anything, but what I am saying is that we have had a situation here where there's claim by even the chairman of the election commission did say these are important issues that should be dealt with at the election petition, and now the petition is thrown out, and for technical reasons, and these important issues having to do with people who should not be participating in election doing so has come to naught. So I'm glad it has happened, and I hope that the result would be as I have stated.
Yeah, and from my standpoint, I want to say the CCJ did not have jurisdiction with a literal reading of our constitution and the CCJ's own charter. And the CCJ took jurisdiction to hear the matter during the 5 months. And it said, look, this is election and it's an important matter. And we are the court of last resort. And I think it opened the precedents there. And I think this appeal court could not say that it didn't have jurisdiction for such a matter. I think, and I agree with you, Dr. Jeffrey, this is a very important matter about an election that, for all intents and purposes, has not been concluded as far as everything that happened is concerned. We'll get the lawyers in probably tomorrow to delve into the legal implications here. Let's press forward and talk about Aubrey Norton's election. As I said in the introduction, Norton won by 82% of the votes. He got a majority of his people on the executive. Henry Jeffrey, were you surprised that, I know you wrote two very important columns I republished on my website this weekend. One was wishing Aubrey Norton well. Another one was comment the hour, comment the man. And it's been read on social media a lot because I think it put the election of Aubrey Norton in larger perspective. Were you surprised? Are you surprised, first of all, at the extent to which he has won? And secondly, that the other two have not done so well.
Well, thank you, David. Let me say that I believe that Aubrey Norton represents a lot of what the membership of the PNC and a lot of Afro-Guyanese feel at this moment. You only got to walk the streets, and you would have known that they believe that Mr. Harman has been not forceful enough and not taking on the PPP enough, and that the PPP needs to be taken on. Aubrey Norton has been doing this all his life, and that's why I said that, that will be one of the things that should happen, that will happen for the most part. So I wasn't really surprised that he won. The margin, yes, surprised me, but we must also look at the numbers, and you will see that although Aubrey has come close to the kind of numbers that other leaders have had, I mean, I think he almost got something like, 48% of those who voted. 48% of the constituents, which was about 2,500, I'm told. He did only get about 33%. I'll say about 38.7% of the constituency as a whole. So you have nearly 60% of people that did not vote for Mr. Norton. You have to be that I didn't participate. I am not making much claim here because I don't know how delegates are chosen. I don't know all of that. But if you had that sort of numbers, 2,500 people, and you only got 900 and what was it? 967.
67. Uh-huh.
You were 60% of the people did not vote for him. Now, you're talking about perspective. Going forward, he has to look at that carefully. That's something he has to look at carefully. The euphoria about winning is great. I mean, he wiped out the opposition. But if he wished to stay in that position, because in 2 years, you perhaps at another biennial Congress, you can have another challenge. And if he wished to stay in that position, he has to realize that he has something like 60% of those people that they did not vote for him, and will have to take that into consideration as he go forward. So yes, I expected him to win. Maybe not with such a large, absolutely wiping out the opposition, but that says something about the opposition and the sort of actions they will have to take too. But certainly, he has a lot to think about also, particularly if you consider that these delegates truly represent the majority of members in the PNCR.
Yes, and thank you for that observation, Henry. The observation of the relatively low turnout at election, and I don't know the inner workings of party elections to understand why there was such a low turnout, and it's something that nobody has mentioned up until now. And so I'm glad that you mentioned it, and I want to concur what you said. I mean, Lord, nowhere I have gone, and it's in Portland, in Buxton, I went in BV for a little while 2 days ago, and wherever I go, the ordinary person on the street, even children, are talking about this election. It was as if it were, for African Guyanese in particular, as it were a national election. And I think that's a very important factor. But let me go to Adam Harris, who is now joined us. Adam, you were on. You didn't indicate when you were on which horse you were, quote unquote, riding. Were you surprised, first of all, that Norton won? He won by such a large margin.
No, I'm not surprised because I looked at the various campaigns. And you got to remember that Aubrey Norton has been doing this almost all his life, from the days of YSM. He hit the ground. He visited almost all the locations you can think about. When you look at some of the forums he addressed, and you look at the message that he was carrying, people naturally gravitated to him because they believe that the party has been too docile. The party has not been as active as they would have liked. And Norton was saying all the right things. At the press conference he had yesterday, I said to him that sections of the PPP are saying that with Aubrey Norton there, one can expect riotous behavior. And he gave an interesting answer. He said, let them point to one example that he sparked riotous behavior. Yes, he's aggressive. Yes, he knows what should be done. But he also knows that there are certain parameters in which he can operate. Now, Aubrey, I heard Dr. Jeffrey talking about the number of votes when you compare it to the actual number of the constituents. One of the things that started this relatively low turnout was the fact that it was supposed to be virtual. A lot of people did not actually use the virtual forum Yes, there were some polling stations in all the regions, but we don't know where these stations were located. So there could have been members out there who couldn't get to vote. The other thing had to do with the registration. How many people out there are active members in that their membership has been paid up and all of that? So we take that into consideration. And I would say that there was a sizable turnout compared to what would happen. In some places, you only had 70 votes, some places 60 votes, but where you had relatively large constituents, Norton literally wiped out the opposition. And that was clear from how the results came in. You were showing the regions and what you want, except for Region 7, where Mr. Harmon was very strong. And there he got, 70 votes or something like that, and Norton got 14. Norton just got to everybody in all the regions you can talk about, and that was a lot of work. And I saw him running along, and so I wasn't surprised at the result.
You weren't surprised at the result. And you made an interesting observation there, Adam. You would know, you were a party man for a long time in terms of the inner workings of the party, that we know at election time, members come out of the woodwork and so on. So you might have had people on the list who really were not active members and so on and so forth. So that could be part of the answer that Jeffrey was raising just now about the turnout. Let's go to Christopher Ram. Chris, unlike the other two panelists here, I don't think you have had much institutional relationship with the PNC. So you might be the outsider along with me here on this panel. Are you surprised that Norton won? Same question. Are you surprised that Norton won? Are you surprised at the margin by which he has won? And thirdly, why do you think the election captured the imagination, certainly of those on the side, the base of the PNC?
Well, let me take you up on that first point you made, David, about not having any relationship with the PNC.
Institutional, I said.
Institutional, yes. But in fact, I think it's a matter of public knowledge. I was once approached by Vola Lawrence to ask her whether I would be prepared to get into the leadership contest as a representative or as a nominee. I think it's of the constituency in Rivell. I declined because it was never, not that I had anything against the PNC as such, but I just didn't think I wanted to pursue that kind of political role. I just say that just for the record.
Yes.
And the other thing I want to say is every one of us must be pleasantly surprised that the PNC has had elections in which there was, as Henry said, the turnout was not as big as we might have wished, but there has been no accusation of fraud or tampering or anything of that nature. And very importantly, the mechanism by which the party chooses its executive. I think those things are commendable. That Aubrey Norton would have done so well is as much to do with his own performance in terms of the elections as with the quality of the competition he had to deal with. Now, Harmon was sometimes seen as the de facto president under David Granger. He was the campaign manager. He lost the elections. He was aloof. He was arrogant. He really was. He antagonized not only his own others but his own supporters. Now, I don't think anybody thought Dr. Richard Van West Charles was a serious contender for the leadership of the PNC. What was he in a position to offer at this stage? So the quality of the leadership, in my view, the quality of the competition, probably did not bring out the best in Aubrey Norton. Maybe there's more he should have done and could have done. But he is the unchallenged leader of the party. It's the PNC has been an institution, it's been part of the government and part of the governance of this country. What happens in the PNC, the quality of its elections, the quality of its leadership, the quality of its policies, concern each and every one of us. And we now have to say, Norton, who is not so much identified, and that's my concern, with progressive politics, and all the points I've heard so far is about elections and politics and power and power. We will talk about the other things, but as leader of the opposition, or leader of the main opposition party, let me be careful, as the alternative government, surely there are serious other issues to be discussed, and I would like to hear Aubrey Norton and his team. I mean, we're not talking about the oil contract. We're not talking
all right, Chris, we're going to get to that.
Yes, so I'm saying, I'm hoping Aubrey Norton is not a one-issue politician.
I will get to that. I will get to that. But since you raised it, I would like to put to you the observation made by both Adam and Henry, in that Aubrey has captured a contemporary mood of his constituency. And while you may be talking, while you and I and others may think that issues matter, for that constituency that I know very well, what matters at this moment is a leader that stands up for them, as they put it. And I hope you're not trifling that.
No. That indeed is very important. It's one of the political things. I mean, when I look at my notes, he is inheriting a broken party. To fix that without state power behind you and state resources behind you is not going to be easy, David.
Yes, but he's also responding to a constituency that feels beaten down, beaten up, trampled on for a year and a quarter. And I can tell you, Chris, that should not be trifled with, that the fact that he responds to that should not make him look like a one-issue leader. One has to win the leadership in order then to get on with the issues that we're talking about. Right.
That goes without saying, Mr. Moderator. Right. But I am giving you my views.
Yes, no. And I'm just trying to get to you that as important as the issues were, he was not running for president of the country. He was running for leader of a party.
But he surely has to take on these issues. I mean, the border is... David, let me finish, please. No, David, you have to let me finish. David, you have to let me finish, please.
Yeah.
Surely the border issue is as critical as anything in this country. If you don't want to say the oil contract, is the border issue is.
Yes, but those were not on the agenda for the party's election. Those are national issues.
The battery is low.
Yes, those are national issues that he said he will deal with. But what he was running for was not president of Guyana, but leader of the People's National Congress. But to come back to the issues that he should...
How come the batteries?
He should address. Jeffrey, Dr. Jeffrey, let me bring you in here. One of the issues that is uppermost as Norton comes out of this campaign is unity within the party. How do you think Norton should move as far as bringing together what Mr. Danger said at factions and factionalism in the party?
Yeah. Let me first say that Aubrey did mention issues, national issues. They just don't happen to be the issues that Chris is concerned about. He did mention that he's interested in the National Resources Fund. He's interested in GCOM. Those are major political issues of the day. Border dispute, there has never been an argument between the PPP and the PNC not wanting to work together on border issue. Border issue is not a controversial matter between these two parties. They have taken almost a single stance on this. Norton might have been wasting his time to start talking about border issue because there's no quarrel around border issues. He's into an election and he has got to focus on what is important. The APNU and AFC believe that the election was manipulated. They believe it was manipulated in a given way. They believe that since then, essentially, the government have been running roughshod over the country, and the PNC under Mr. Harmon was not responding in a given way, and therefore they are looking for someone or some sort of arrangement that will deal with this matter. The things, the issues such as the National Resources Fund and also is great. He's going to look at that, but he has to deal with what is the concern, major concern of his constituency. I see nothing wrong with the trajectory of his discourse. And I agree with Chris that he needs to have both things in mind. I'm not saying that. But when you are in an election, you have to craft your thing essentially to deal with what is the fundamental issues that are affecting your people. So the question you asked, I missed it. What was that?
About the unity of the party, bringing the factions together. Yeah, how should we move on that?
My view is that the PNC got to start. Here is where I will go a bit national. The PNC has to start looking at Guyana for what it is. It got to start seeing itself, essentially, call itself multi-ethnic, but essentially its base is essentially Afro people that African ethnicity are carrying that base. The same goes for the PPP. When they have to have a sort of committee and sit down clearly to define what this party is. They got to get fundamental here. To say that you have to recognize the interests of your base is not to say that then you're a single ethnic party, so to speak. But those that are with you must understand that those people are your base and they must not be trampled upon. Not simply because they are Guyanese, but they are not trampled upon from their perspective, at least because they are Guyanese. They are trampled upon because they believe they are Africans. And you have to respond to that. The PNC will have to sit down and make that quite clear to every single person that it has such an interest. I think the PVP maybe got greater leeway to talk about we Guyanese because they're in office and that sort of thing. They are saying we Guyanese while most people will say they are doing a lot more for their constituents. The PNC don't have that. So Aubrey and his people got to sit down and first take off that view that you are this universal people in Guyana. There's no universal people in Guyana. Essentially, we don't have a united public opinion, and everybody knows that. If the PBNC say they believe in something, and the PB say they do not, the Indian people are going to start believing with the PB. Oh, one of their own lawyers said so the other day. He said you can't get a real fair trial in the courts because that is how it is. And you have to take that into consideration, both if you are going to confront. So firstly, you got to sit down with your think tank and reformulate the view. This is not Burnham time. This is not Hoyt's time. This is a time when the reality is quite there. When Burnham came to office in 1964, he promised that by now we will be a one people. He said it. He said he will show that the PPP has misled the Indian people into believe that we are racist and that gradually become one people. Is today or yesterday? I seen a letter from Mr. Roy Clement, my friend, who's saying, oh, the religious division has gone. I never knew it was such a large thing in my first place. But the religious division has gone. And, in time, the ethnic one would go. You can't run a country like that. You got to deal with issues that they are now and not hope that in time they will go away. So they have to sit down, clear their head, and then organize to allow ordinary people out there to see that on all sides, because from the organizational side, they're not a single party, that their interests are being taken care of, partly by having the people in the right structures, but also by their going to the people themselves, going down to the people, Indian people, whatsoever people, and doing that. If I was Mr. Norton, I'd use this Christmas season to just decide to go and see people. Call my think tank or whatsoever you have together. Go and see people. People of all things. People are a little bit more open now, Miss Christmas and all that, and start to talk to them. But the unity of the party is of fantastic importance. But that unity will only be solidified if he shows himself being able to stand up to the PPP. That's what he promised. That is what he got to deliver on. He can walk the country as much as he likes, but if he doesn't deliver on this major promise that he has made, well, as I said before, you have 2 years, no, and he can be challenged. And I don't believe the others are dead or will walk. We'll have to see. But others can also come up, emerge. So that is what I think about unity. It's a
Carry me back on me body and sissy. Carry me back home. Africa, I want to go back home. Africa, I said I tired home. Just give me plane passage. Now let me go way back. Go back to Africa. Go see me grandmama. Carry me back to me mama country. Carry me back home. How many of you want to go back? How many of you want to go back? You want to go way back? Good morning. Welcome to another program of BUXTONIAN Morning Time. It's the morning after Boxing Day. But it is still Boxing Day. Because in GT, once the holiday falls on a Sunday, then you get the Monday. Right? So you could have done all you wanted last night, knowing very well that you got today to chillax and relax. Sleep late. Sleep in. Good. Well, how many of you want to go back? I know a lot of people when they hear that song, carry me back to me mama country, carry me back home. Africa, I want to go back home. Africa, I say I'm tired home. Just give me a plane passage and let me go way back. Go back to Africa, go see me grandmama. A lot of people think only about the physical going back. But what about the spiritual going back? What about going back in time, historical going back? What about reflecting? Reflecting is a way of going back. What about reflecting on what your ancestors did that you could be here? What about reflecting on the struggles of the ancestors? Let's go back. Let's go back in time. Let's go back to my grandmama. Let us analyze how my grandmama lived, how my grandpapa lived. How did they make it after plantation slavery? Of course, grandmama and grandpapa has to be representative because many of our grandmama and grandpapa don't know anything about the plantation. And if their grandmama and grandpapa don't know, but when you take grandmama and grandpapa into context, you obviously are thinking about them great grandmothers and grandfathers and so on. The enslaved Africans. What did they do? How did they arrive at this point? How did they help us to arrive at this point? What did they do after plantation slavery? So not every time you hear this song, "Carry Me Back to My Mama Country," you start thinking, it's time to physically leave these shores of Ghana. Your ancestors built this. Their blood, sweat, and tears are invested here. And when there's an investment, the least one would expect are profits, dividends. And so once your foreparents invested here, what we should be looking forward to are the profits from their investment. And so we have to ensure we stay here and demand the profits from their investment. Keep that in mind. We ain't going away. Don't let them fool yourself. Don't let them fool themselves because here we singing, "Carry Me Back to My Mama Country." No. Don't fool yourself. We ain't going no way. We'll be right here and we will challenge the status quo and we will demand what is rightfully ours. And what is rightfully ours to start with is equity and equality, fairness and justice, not injustice. We have equal rights to everything that is available in this country to everyone else. And so we must demand it. We must demand it. They tell you it's one Guyana. One Guyana for some people, another for others. I like to use the recent reference of James Bond. They got two Guyana, why? I now realize they got two Guyana. Well, some of us have been sleeping too late. Like today, some people are going to be sleeping too late. They're going to be missing the message. Can't afford to sleep. You don't sleep on a moving train, something bad can happen to you, if not anybody else. Right? We want a Guyana that lives to its motto, one people, one nation, one destiny. Yes, one people, one nation, one destiny. That's what the motto says. We don't want to hear about one Guyana. Right? And most important, what we ought to be interested in is perhaps that one destiny. If one set of people are moving forward, every person must move forward. One ethnic group moving forward, every ethnic group must move forward. Provisions must be made by the state to ensure that each and every one of the ethnic groups in this country gets a fair opportunity to move forward. There's some who are in a worse state than others. And so it means that the state has to take extra measures to ensure that they keep up with the others who are ahead. And not, as a matter of fact, not only keep up, but ensure they catch up first. So it is to catch up. The state must make efforts to ensure that those who are at the bottom of the social ladder gets moved upwards to catch up with the others. Right? And then level the playing field. But you can't tell us that you must compete equally when some of us are starting at a disadvantage. That disadvantage is historical. Came off a plantation, came from plantation slavery, came into colonialism, right? It came into modern governance in Ghana. And so no, we can't compete fairly or equally with the state that we're currently in. You have to ensure that systems are put in place to bring us up to the level of the others, and so we can compete from there. Then is when the playing field gets leveled. Because right now it's not fair. Let's keep that in mind. But if you look at what's happening right now, you'll come to realize maybe that Mr. Amsterdam is thinking about some utopian idea. Ain't gonna happen in this country. Because you've seen it for the last 15 months or so. Everything is being done to keep one set of people at the bottom of the social ladder. All of the grants, financial grants and aids and so on, are going in one direction. The direction that is opposite to where the majority of our people are. I saw somebody say last night, Gaisuco is going to result in resource curse for Guyana. Gaisuco will cause resource curse for Guyana. Because the majority of some people are there. And this vindictive cabal continues to channel the country's resources right there into a black hole called Gaisuco. They don't mind that the end of year production, the production for the year at Gaisuco is way below what was projected. They don't mind that the price at which Gaisuco is producing is less than half of what they can, the price that Gaisuco is producing is more than double what they will get on the international market. They don't mind that. What concerns them is that their people are the majority in that industry. And so they have a responsibility in their minds to continue to channel the nation's resources to those people. And that is what they've been doing. But if you look at the public sector, where the majority of our people are, resources are not being channeled there. Resources are not being channeled there. As a matter of fact, insults, discrimination, stagnation, that is what is being encouraged in the public sector where most of our people are. Keep that in mind. Done? It's now 7 hours and 19 on the 27th day of December 2021. A new year is quickly approaching us. We are going to have with us this morning the recently elected leader of the People's National Congress, Aubrey Norton. He's set to join us around 7:30. That would be another 10 minutes or so. Good? Another 10 minutes or so. So start putting those questions together. I will be taking your questions for the leader of the PNCR. Certainly I will. Now, I trust that you had a good Christmas holiday. I hope that you not only enjoy the goodies, but you were thankful for the providers and providence, and that you also kept in mind and you considered and you shared with those who are less fortunate. I hope you did not overeat, because if you overeat and you continue to overeat, January is going to be a tough month for you. You will have to be losing the extra weight that you gained, those extra pounds, or you'll have to face the stores, the boutiques, to get new clothing. Those are just about some simple challenges. But worse yet, you could be causing harm to yourself in that you could be exposing yourself to health conditions when you overindulge. Some of us can't eat too much of anything. We will end up with this problem or that problem. Diabetics can't eat too much black cake, sponge cake. And this is a season where a whole lot of cakes are around. It really calls for personal discipline if you're going to protect yourself, right? There's some people who can't eat too much fatty foods. Pepper pot usually is a thing that is filled with fat. I see a lot of people when they do their pepper pot, it's oil, like 1 inch of oil at the top there, right? And as we say, if you allow that to sleep, the fat is so thick. But these are favorite things for us. We love to eat pepper pot. I don't know any Guyanese who doesn't go to the pepper pot 2-3 times a day. Whether it's pepper pot and bread, pepper pot and rice, pepper pot and mouth, you know. And so you're tempted to overeat because all of this food is around you. But I'm encouraging you to understand that ultimately you have to look out for your health. Ultimately. And for those around you. Good? Yes, you see, I think George Tanner is saying more people die from overeating than from starvation. And so don't find yourself into that statistic. Eat. Enjoy. But do so with consideration. You know, there's a thing that is said in economics. You see somebody saying one day won't hurt. One day won't hurt. Maybe that day would be the straw that broke the camel's back. Keep that in mind, Olney Barnett. One day, that one day, may be the straw that broke the camel's back. You know, around this season, I tend to eat the least. Seriously. I tend to eat the least. Y'all won't believe it, eh? Some people wonder how I maintain this size and so on, but I think I'm a very disciplined person when I get going. But I was saying in economics, I was taught that things lose their utility after you had the first taste of satisfaction, let me see. Right? I hope I'm explaining this correctly. It's like you have this big craving. I want ice cream, I want ice cream, I want ice cream. And you go and you buy your favorite ice cream. And after the first or the second lick, or scoopful, whatever, that craving is gone. Right? Your craving has been satisfied. The average person does not put away that ice cream thereafter, but they endeavor to eat it to its last drop. Right? My concept is, as long as your craving has been satisfied, it's an opportune time to get rid of the rest. Good? And so, despite having all all of that food around you. You don't have to nyam, 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 as we say. I believe after your first scoop, first bowlful, first whatever of pepper pot for the day, ah boy, that's it. You can go back a little later. But some of us, oh my God, we really overdo it. And when we go at it like that, we are simply overeating, in my mind. We're simply overdoing it. It's there. People say, you see there, you have to eat it. Right? Careful. It's not just one day that. June said I remind her she has some ice cream to finish off. Right. Don't see it as just one day or this one occasion. Maybe you have situations that were lingering that you weren't even aware of. And by just overdoing it, you trigger it all off. Right? And so that one day turns out to be the straw that breaks the camel back. Be careful. That's my advice to you. That's my advice to you, right? Anything done in excess can be harmful. Anything used in excess can be poisonous. Right? We have to be very careful. Good. Stroke of skipping you fit Kiraki. Janet Elias says that. Janet must know what she's talking about. I'm not too sure, you know. It is 7 hours 26. Let me see where the leader is. But those are some tidbits I wanted to talk to you about. What's going to happen for the new year? First, I can encourage you to come to Kidam's Place in Lime. All year's night. We had the Christmas Eve live Lime on KAMSTV last Friday. This Friday, you can come online at Kidam's Place in a physical way. Come, let's Lime. Let's greet the new year together. Right? Let's greet the new year together and make some noise and cheer on and so on and be one big family for the new year. Because the new year should be an interesting one. I'm hoping that Guyanese really see the need to stand up against the vindictive cabal and to really get the game on. A lot of people have been waiting for a new leader at the PNC. And so that has happened. They have a new leader. A lot was riding on the Congress. Congress is over. Where do you go from here? Right? Where do you go from here? That's the question. In case you're not aware, I think the next sitting of the National Assembly would see the government taking to the Assembly several bills. Among them is the organ harvesting. In other words, they're legalizing the trade in body part, right? We've seen in other parts of the world where organ harvesting is big business and big trouble also. There's a bill that is going to the National Assembly for that. There's also a bill going to the National Assembly to amend the Natural Resource Fund Act. And that should be something of concern to all of us. Because in actuality, what Jack Dio and the PPP is about to do is remove, okay, those guardrails which will actually protect the Natural Resource Fund. The money is coming from oil and other natural resources. I remember the last time I raised this issue, there was a discussion about, well, Jack Dio and the others were claiming basically that there were too many hamburgs to access the fund. And former Minister of Finance Winston Jordan had sent me a message to say, hey, let them show you the hamburg. Because there are no hamburgs in that bill. It is pure oversight. There's no hamburg, right? And so don't let them pull wool over your eyes and say, you know, and say they're hamburgs because of the oversight committee. they're ready to argue that the oversight committee is too big and they need to reduce it. That's one of the arguments they're making. Don't fall for that. The more eyes to watch them, the better Guyanese will be. Better our resources will be protected, because they got to go through a lot of eyes. And all of the eyes that they will go through are not necessarily favorable to them. And that is what they want to do, remove the possibility of people watching them like eagles when they attempt to misuse our funds. Right? Keep that in mind. And so people must be prepared to struggle for what they want. And I hope that Guyanese, assisted by, guided by the new leader of the PNC,
your call is being forwarded to a voice,
are ready and willing to wage that struggle to protect what is rightfully ours. Good? This morning's program comes to you with the kind compliments of Kidam's Hideout Fish Shop, Bar and Grill, located at Silent Dam, Buxton North. You can check us out. We're open for the holidays. We're also now offering accommodation in case you are on the coast and you want to relax a bit. You can book our semi-furnished. Sir, I'm awaiting the arrival of the leader. You listening? Yes, I'm having a difficulty. I don't know where that difficulty is coming from. But I'm not making contact with the leader. Let me see. Sometimes technology gives us a beating. Nevertheless, I was saying that people have to be prepared to.
the mailbox off, 5-9.
People have got to be prepared to struggle in the new year for what they want. Struggle. What is there to struggle for? First and foremost, we have to protect that National Resource Fund Act, that Natural Resource Fund. We have to protect it. Because while it may not appear so, it is that money which the PPP is taking to fatten their supporters, strengthen their support bases, while weakening those of the AP and UFC. And when I say weakening those of the AP and UFC, sometimes I really don't like to talk about communities in terms of supporting this political party and that political party. But the reality is, this country has been divided, especially by the PPP, into PPP communities and PNCR coalition communities. And there's no question about that, because if you listen to the utterances of the PPP and the representatives, you will hear them say it. Batty Lyon, for example, said the other day, the PNC has not taken care of its followership. And so when you are a sitting minister of government and you're talking about a political party, albeit your opponent, having not taken care of its followership, and your political party and government is taking care of its followership, it means you have divided that country into them and us. And when we are in power, we will look after our people. And their people will be left unattended to. Or we will give them pittances. And so Guyanese have to recognize that, hey, this country is divided into them and us. But the resources belong to all of us. And so if they want to have the them and us mentality, fine. But we have a right to struggle to have equal and fair access to the resources. And so that is something we have to be prepared to fight for. We have to be prepared to fight for it. It is not just going to be handed to us. And so I'm encouraging you. Right? I'm encouraging you. Start focusing your mind, body, and soul to partake in that struggle. Since the election of Aubrey Norton as the new leader of the PNC, a lot of folks have been talking about what they expect, especially folks from the opposite side. Right? Folks from the opposite side. A lot of people are expecting riotous behavior. A lot of people are expecting Norton to bring out, quote unquote, the goons onto the street and disrupt business and disrupt the economy and so on. My question is it necessary to disrupt the normal flow of things in this country? At this point in time, is it necessary? Do you think it is necessary to disrupt the normal flow of things? I always say protest is intended to disrupt the norm, or what people seem to be the norm. And so given the fact that you have a National Assembly where the government with a one-seat majority, a very slim majority that is, passes every thing that it wants. Every bill it takes to the National Assembly, it gets its way with. Given that reality, given the reality that regardless of how strong the arguments against what they propose in the National Assembly, the installed government will have its way. Is it necessary to disrupt the normal flow of things? Is it necessary to take to the streets? I dare argue that it is absolutely necessary that citizens take their issues to the streets, since those issues are not being dealt with in a considerate manner in the National Assembly. A democracy is government for the people by the people. And if one small group of people are having their way because of that slim majority in Parliament, then the majority of the people must have their say by way of disrupting the normal flow of things. And so if Aubrey Norton happens to be the leader of the PNCR at this juncture, and the people are calling for leadership, then I don't think he has any option but to leave. And so I was saying prior to Congress that everybody wants Aubrey. And after Congress, everybody got Aubrey. But what is next? What do you expect from Aubrey? Is Aubrey ready and able to deliver what you expect of him, from him? Only time will tell. Only time will tell. I hope he comes on this morning because we have an arrangement. I don't know what has kept him off so far, so that he can answer some of those questions to us. I certainly want to know what's his agenda going forward. Right? Like I want to know what's your agenda going forward. Are you prepared for this struggle? Teachers are going to be, first students are expected to return to school in full in the new year. Satira Gal said that. And teachers are expected to be licensed in the new year. Satira Gal said that. Are teachers prepared to be licensed? Has the union for teachers taken into consideration what licensing will mean? Right? Has the union taken that into consideration? Well, I've been giving it some thoughts. The argument is that lawyers have to be licensed, doctors have to be licensed, nurses have to be licensed, and so on. And so if teachers are as important as they are because they basically lay the foundation for our children's education and so on, then they too must be licensed. I dare argue that licensing teachers at this moment, under this government, is not a move aimed at quality control, but it's a move aimed at control. Right? Let us talk about that control. If you were to do a survey currently, you will find out that a large portion of teachers, a large percentage of teachers have not been vaccinated. They have not been vaccinated. Okay? They have not been vaccinated. And to this date, Sitara Gal and the rest of the cabal failed to get those teachers to be vaccinated. Failed to get them to be vaccinated. One of the challenges of dealing with the teachers who are unvaccinated is that they can't just dismiss them like they've been doing to other public servants. The Teaching Service Commission is the body responsible for the hiring and firing of teachers, not Sitara Gal. Teaching Service Commission. And so to dismiss a teacher, you have to have disciplinary hearings and all kinds of procedures. Conducted by the Teaching Service Commission before they can dismiss a teacher under whatever grounds. And so it's not easy to get rid of a teacher who might be critical of the government, who might be refusing to take the vaccine and so on. It's not that easy. And so this wicked and vindictive cabal has hatched a plan. You know what? We can get rid of them. Let us make adjustments to the law to say, first and foremost, they have to be licensed. And in order to get your license, you will have to show proof of vaccination. And so those teachers who remain unvaccinated will now have a choice. Get vaccinated to get your license, or be unlicensed and therefore not allowed to continue teaching. I don't know if the union has taken that into consideration. I don't know if teachers have taken that into consideration. Right? But that's the trick of the PPP. They're coming through the back door to bring pressure to bear on those unvaccinated teachers. Anyone who understands the economy of this country, anyone who understands the situation in this country will understand that the average person doesn't want to lose their job as it is right now. Because employment is hard to come by. And so when faced with a choice, vaccination or license, remain unvaccinated or get your license, it is the belief that many teachers will opt to get vaccinated. They have so far been able to remain unvaccinated because, like I said, it is the Teaching Service Commission which ultimately would have the task of dismissing them, not Sitarigal. Had it been for Sitarigal and our cohorts, a lot of teachers would have been gone or vaccinated, but they don't have control over that. And so that's the challenge right now. So that vaccination which we're talking about, that licensing which we're talking about in the new year, keep in mind, teachers, unionists, workers' representatives, citizens, that this is not about ensuring quality. This is about ensuring compliance. Because if you're licensed to, like a motor vehicle license, your license will have an expiry date. And if you don't toe the line during the life of your license, when it comes to an end, it's hell and razor for you to be relicensed. Because this vindictive cabal will decide, oh, this one has not been towing the line. This one has not been jumping when we say jump. And so we will take this one out of the system. We will not grant this one license. And so the licensing is a whole tool of manipulation and control. And I'm hoping that the teachers and the representatives are prepared to struggle against licensing. I said last week in a program, the issue in this country with teachers and delivery of service to students is not about certification and suitability and ability and so on. A lot of our teachers are outstanding. They can do outstanding work. And given the conditions under which they made to work and the results which they produce, that is testimony that they can work magic, as we like to say. They can do outstanding work. The problem really in the education system is education management. From the top right down to the bottom. From the ministry right down to the head teachers, supervisors, all of them. That's where the issue is. Why the issue is there? Head teachers are not prepared to stand up for their staff, to demand the resources which are necessary for the proper functioning of their schools, because they are afraid of victimization from their education officers. If we as our teachers rock the boat, the education officers will be vindictive and so they will stymie our promotions, etc. And so we are not prepared to rock the boat. And the education officers themselves are not prepared to rock the boat because they are scared of the higher echelons at the Ministry of Education, like the Chief Education Officer and so on, who definitely is in bed with the political masters and certainly is not willing to rock the boat. That is where the problem is. If people are prepared to stand in their professional capacity and demand respect for the profession, and if the politicians are willing to respect that, then we will see a major turnaround in the education sector. But Sitaya wants to dictate at what age a child should go to nursery school. That's a policy decision, yes. But did Sitaya ever do child psychology to determine whether or not a child is capable of 3 years or 2 years, 9 months? And so, when she decides that, hey, we are going to allow children at 3 years to attend nursery school, does she have any understanding of the psychology behind all of that? Is the chief education officer, who would have been trained in child psychology, etc., bold enough to say, Madam Minister, this might be your desire, but it cannot happen because these are the negatives. Is the chief education officer bold and strong enough and professional enough to say, this is the correct position, and if you're not willing to take the correct position, I am willing to resign or bring this to the public's attention? No. Not in this country. If minister says so, as so, regardless of the fact that my learning, my training, my professionalism is telling me, this is not the right route to go. And so, chief education officer toes the line. And everybody thereafter toes the line because they recognize it's a political instruction. And the teachers down below are made to be the scapegoat because they are the ones who have to make the political instruction work. When you have children in school, at 3 years, for example, when the requirement is 3.9 or 3.6, whatever it is, teachers are no longer teachers, but they have now become babysitters. They have now become babysitters because they now have to perhaps potty train children, clean them off when they mess up themselves, comfort them when they're missing their parents, right? So instead of focusing on the business of teaching, imparting knowledge, socializing these children, the teachers now have this added burden of being caregivers. Well, they always are, babysitters and so on. And so when the results present themselves, results of failures, teachers are blamed. They're not doing their job, but they're not allowed to do their job. They're asked to do other jobs. Part of education in the classroom is what we call teaching aids. Classrooms are expected to be student-friendly, child-friendly. Many students are visual in their learning. They're not abstract. They don't learn in abstract. They have to see concrete things to get a concept. And so classrooms are supposed to be decked out. Whatever the concept of the week, let's say. The necessary teaching aids are supposed to be on display. Whatever is going to be taught for the term. Teaching aids are supposed to be present. So those children who are visual can make the connection between what is being said, what they're being taught in the abstract, and that which is before them. And so it aids their learning. But teaching aids, quite expensive. The ministry is expected at the beginning of the term or pre-term, because the preparation of teaching aids is actually a pre-term activity. The ministry is expected to provide the resources pre-term for teachers to access, to make those teaching aids and so on, acquire them. Go through the school system and you will find out many terms come to an end and the resources for teaching aids have not been given to the schools. What do teachers do? They use their own little resources. They use their resources from their small salaries, their meager salaries, to prepare those teaching aids. Now, if your salary is already small, you're faced with your own financial situations, how much of that money will you be able to invest in getting the requisite amount and type of teaching aids to aid learning in your classroom? And so when the supervisors turn up, why is this classroom bare? Where are the teaching aids? Well, heck. I know many teachers are not bold enough to say that. Well, go to hell. Did you provide the resources for us to prepare it? Hell no. And since you didn't, then that is why the classroom is bare. That is why the classroom is bare. But no. The head teachers, the supervisors, senior mistresses, and so on, everybody, cowers in fear, and it keeps their mouth shut or bend over backwards to please the education officers. So, in other words, teachers are made to make bread out of stone. While political decisions are being made, and people higher up the chain are rolling over and accepting it, teachers are the scapegoats down at the bottom there. So when Satire Gal and our courts come and tell you there are a lot of teachers who are not doing what they're supposed to do, and so we're going to license them, and so if they don't perform, we will not relicense them. Hell no. It is not about that. You want teachers to perform? Let us first demand that they be given the necessary resources, or the other way around. Let Satire Gal provide the resources in a timely manner, in a necessary quantity, in the requisite quantity, and then demand production. And so if you're providing what is necessary and the teachers are not producing, then you have a right to call them out for it. Don't let us put the cart before the horse. The horse must go before the cart, unless the person who is doing the hitching is an ass. And so don't be caught up in that nonsense. We have to license teachers because many of them are in the system and they're not producing. How will they produce if you don't give them the tools to produce? Chalk and talk. The days of that has long gone. I hope the union is going to come and sound its voice on this issue. I hope teachers are prepared to support the unions as they confront this issue. At the end of the day, licensing might be good. But don't put the cart before the horse. Fix the system. And then license. And you know, with this vindictive cabal, there's a trick in the hat. Licensing in this instance is not about licensing for quality. It's licensing for control. It's like they did to the public service. I explained that last program or two. When they sold dreams to the public servants. Don't go on the fixed pension. On the fixed pension, it will take too long to get your gratuity and pensions and so on. We will put you on contract. You get gratuity every 6 months. You get travel allowance every 6 months. Vacation allowance every 6 months. This is so lucrative. Take this. What I didn't tell you, that was the puppeteer's string for them. Because they used that contract to puppeteer the contracted employees. They dangled it over their heads. If you don't do as we say, when we say how we say, then when this expires in a year's time, you are on the breadline. We will not renew your contract. You're not a team player. Compared to if you are on a fixed pensionable, first thing you get being on a fixed pensionable is security of tenure. Right? First thing you get by being on a fixed pensionable. Yeah, when they're fixed, you're fixed there. Anybody removing you from your job on the fixed pensionable is the Public Service Commission. These commissions are very important, you know. And that is why the PPP has been trying to control all the commissions. You can see the war they had with Pastor and the Police Service Commission because they wanted to control it. They are going to get control now. I will tell you about that just now. Let's talk about. Right? They didn't tell you that being on a fixed pensionable, your job is secured, because for them to remove you, they have to go through the Public Service Commission. And the Public Service Commission is not a one-person commission. It is several persons who will have to sit, look at the evidence presented, weigh it, and come to a conclusion. I'm sorry if I'm going to sound rude. Y'all stop telling me to call the leader of the opposition. I called several times, I did not get him. It's not my responsibility to find out why he's not answering his phone. I trust that he's well. But I'm sure he has somebody who's responsible for his well-being. Right? Y'all stop this thing. I am a program host, not a babysitter. Like how y'all want to make the teachers. Good? I know some of them will see rude. I like to deal with things as I see them. Sometimes. Right? So, they set you up. They dangle the 6 months money in front of you. And because you want it now for now, you grab at it. Not realizing that you're actually putting a noose around your neck for them to control you. Why they never put teachers on contract? Well, I can't say never. Simon Blackman, I have two posts. One is that Norton is going to be on Politics 101 tomorrow, which is Tuesday. And the other one says that he's going to be on the BUXTONIAN Morning Time today. Good? Anyhow, that boat has sailed. It's now 8 hours 5. So that boat has sailed. We're talking about you recognizing the issues that you're confronted with and being prepared to confront those who are setting you up like this. They don't put teachers on contract like that. Or teachers are not on contract like that. How many teachers you know are on a contract where they get 6 months gratuity and vacation allowance and so on every 6 months? No. Yeah. Yes, sir. No, it's 8 o'clock. I got an hour to go, so what? Uh-huh. Okay, I hear you. Good. See, I told y'all, somebody has to be responsible for the leader, not me. Press office of the leader just called. You will come in 15 minutes. It means that you're not going to get your call in time, so you might as well give me a vote. Do I use your call in time to entertain the leader? Or we just open the lines like right now? Your call, right? So I'm telling you. So they use these contracts to set people up. Like I was saying, the commissions are important. The commissions are actually there, or should actually be there, to protect public servants, to protect teachers, to protect police, right? To protect local government officers. So you have the Public Service Commission, you have the local government, what is it called? Local Government Commission, Teaching Service Commission, Police Service Commission, Judicial Service Commission. Those are 5 I remember. I can't remember if there are more. But those commissions are intended to protect the workers in those different sectors. Now, recognizing the importance of those commissions, the PPP has always tried to control the commissions. Because by controlling the commissions, you get to control the workers as if you have them on contract. Because you will use your minions at the commission as a kangaroo court to get rid of the workers. And so that is why there was this big battle over the Police Service Commission while Poslow and Conway and others were in charge. Because the PPP wanted to promote who they wanted to promote. But the commission would have none of it. And ultimately, that decision rested with the commission. And so they came with their trumped up charges and their kangaroo courts and so on to get rid of that, or to stymie the work of that commission before its life actually expired. Right? Understand that. And now that the battle is still waging, quite frankly, between the government and the representatives of the Police Service Commission, there's still a number of court matters between them. The cabal has now taken control of the commission in that it has so far named 3 members of the commission. Can't remember off the top of my head the 3, but I remember Patrick Finlay. But all 3 of those, I can tell you, are minions of the PPP. They are minions of the PPP, including Patrick Finlay. Finlay operated, I think, out of the Ministry of Education in the previous PPP government. His daughter, Swell Finlay Williams, was Public Relations Officer for the Ministry of Education at that time. She has now been promoted to press officer for the fat guy. I think she's press officer for the fat guy. And Patrick Finlay, her father, is back into the realm of things as a nominee to the Police Service Commission. And her husband, Philip Williams, is a contractor to the government. Remember when we were talking about those gift vouchers that Priya was giving to teachers? And the $15,000, the most expensive voucher for photography? Patrick Williams, Williams, he's not Patrick, right? Williams was the contractor for those, for that photography. And so you see this whole nest of corruption and insider trading and nepotism. It's a whole triangular, quadrangular love affair between the Finlays, the Williams, and the government. And so when you have a man like Finlay sitting on the Police Service Commission, you think he's going to be unbiased? Certainly he's there to sing the songs of the PPP. And so one can also already surmise that the PPP got it locked where the Police Service Commission is concerned. Right? And so you're going to see some crazy moves sooner rather than later in the Guyana Police Force in terms of who gets promoted, whether they're qualified or not. The other commissions are due for renewal soon too. Right? They're due for renewal soon. And you're going to see the masquerades which will take place to put people on those commissions. Because the people who are going to go on those commissions are mere minions of the PPP to do their bidding. And so what? You have to be prepared as citizens to defend your democracy. Don't tell me that the cabal is in charge and they will do and can do as they like. If you show enough resistance as a nation, if we show enough resistance as citizens, they have to go back to the drawing board. They have to go back to the drawing board. And so I'm saying, don't let us sit back and say it's a done deal, they're in charge. The people really are the ones who are in charge. But if the people want to behave like sheeple, then the PPP and their minions will take advantage on us. Can you imagine in an oil producing country? How long are we producing oil now? A little over a year? Billions of US dollars. Or billions of Guyana, hundreds of billions of Guyanese dollars in a fund. It's not being used to improve the quality of life for every citizen. But debts are being created to improve the lives of some sections of the society. The leader is coming in. In this day and age, when you have access to so much money, people are still looking to handouts. Have you recognized over the Christmas season the number of questionable characters, and I'm calling it as I see it, who have been giving handouts to citizens, and how citizens have been lining up to collect their handouts? I think it was last Friday I told you, be careful of where you take handouts from. Our freeness ain't good. And I certainly don't want my children in general, to go and stand before anybody, especially people of questionable characters, to collect $1,000 or even $5,000. It ought not to be in the first instance. And worse yet, it ought not to be in a country that has been producing oil for several months now and has hundreds of billions of dollars in an account that the politicos are hoping to control wholly and solely, to do as they wish with. It is now 8 hours 15, and the leader of the PNCR is in the house with us, Aubrey Norton. I don't know if we are on 2 different time zones or what happened, but he is here. Mr. Norton, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
All right, so you had us in a bit of suspense there. We were expecting you at 7:15, 7:30.
Well, the truth of the matter is I was waiting on a call, and then when I called the contact, he said that they sent a link, so I've now checked the link.
All right, sir. As they say, water under the bridge. I trust you had a wonderful Christmas season. I saw you were out and about walking around and greeting people and so on. Nevertheless, compliments of the season to you and yours.
Same to you and your listening and viewing audience. I hope they had a very Merry Christmas and looking forward to a prosperous New Year.
Thank you. I'm sure they have been looking forward to hearing from you. And so let us talk about what you have to tell them. I'll give you the first go. If you have a statement you would want to make, you want to talk with them, and then I'll point out questions.
I am preparing a New Year's message, and most of what I want to say will be in the New Year's message. But in the interim, what I want to say to people is that in this period, we have to be very vigilant. We have to be mobilized and stay mobilized. We're at a point where we have to confront a government that seems hell-bent on excluding us from benefiting from the resources of Guyana. And that is not something we can take lightly. So we have to be able to respond to that. The other thing is that it is clear from all the actions that the government is taking that their intention is domination and control. And they're using a number of approaches to ensure domination and control. I heard you referring to handouts. It is clear that they do not intend to put the resources into making people independent. What they're doing is giving handouts, so-called bonuses, things that can't change your life. It can only suffice for a couple of days. But the real genuine things that need to be done to transform the society. For instance, I think it makes more sense if you develop a program to put people into business and give them the resources like we were doing when we were in government to put people into business. Then that will have a long-term impact and it makes you self-sustainable. What they are doing are things that will make you dependent. And once you become dependent, you're controlled. And so clearly that is one of the strategies they are using. And we have got to push for strategies that will result in genuine development of our people. I think that is one area of focus we need to pay careful attention to.
Good. And so let me, in congratulating you on that marvelous victory to become leader of the PNCR, let me ask you, well, you're now the leader. What would you consider to be your priority areas going forward?
Priority areas have got to be, first of all, be in touch with the people to rebuild the party units and community groups from the bottom up. The second most important thing to me is to put a proper public relations and communications unit in place It is my view that for too long we have allowed Jack Doe and the PPP to talk garbage, and we just leave it. It's like he made some comments which I responded to yesterday, and it is my intention to have a strong PR and communication unit that will respond, first of all, respond to everything they do, but secondly, put out new ideas and approaches out there. I think that is critical. Another critical area for me is to begin the process of educating and training first the leadership in the various communities, and secondly, the general public. When you have well-trained leaders in communities, it makes the work easier. And so I will make that as a priority. Another priority to me is to really get the party organized in a way that it starts to earn. It has to be a political organization that is business-oriented and involved in business. So those are some of the priorities at this stage that I would like to focus on and get the party up and running. But for me, everything rests on our ability to mobilize human resource support, because human resource is the key to achieving political objectives. You can have the world of money. If you don't have organization and the people to do it, then money wouldn't allow you to succeed.
Indeed, and in acquiring that organization support, that human element, I know, given the party structure, an important element of that structure is the general secretary. I know you hinted at wanting somebody that is acceptable to all, if I can paraphrase that. Have you decided on your general secretary yet?
I have engaged a person. I'm still working on it. I like when I do something, we spend a good bit of time talking so we understand each other. We develop a rapport so that whoever is working with me will have no fear in telling me exactly what they think rather than what I want to hear. So it's a work in progress.
A work in progress. A lot seem to, well, not seem, but a lot has actually, a lot has certainly been hinged on the finalization of the PNC's Congress and the election of a leader. People were so disgusted, if I can say that, with what was happening in the country, but at the same time they were taking hope, saying that as soon as Congress is over, the PPP will be confronted with all of these excesses and so on. Congress is over. You're the leader now. What can the average citizen expect from you in terms of dealing with the PPP and their excesses? We're talking about, for example, this Natural Resource Fund amendment is about to take place. We saw the passage of a supplementary budget mere days before the year end and so on. And this kind of abusive behavior, the discriminatory distribution of grants and other finances and so on to citizens across the country. Lots of billions being spent on Gaisiko as against pittances being thrown at the public servants. What can people expect?
People can expect a robust opposition to the excesses of the PPP. The opposition will take different forms. I don't want to get into it. The People's Progressive Party, I've said numerous times, seems not to understand press conferences, etc. And so we have to take the action that will ensure they recognize that we constitute more than half of the population if the election results were allowed to be free and fair, and that in essence, they will be confronted. The party intention is to sensibly oppose the PPP and to place them on the back foot.
And given the current situation in terms of what's happening in Parliament, the PPP holds the majority in Parliament. The leader of the party currently is not the leader of the opposition in Parliament. Are we going to see any moves to, quote unquote, change the status quo in terms of leader of the opposition, leader of the PNCR?
Like I said before, I prefer to deal with those matters internally before I make public pronouncements. We are just out of a Congress. We have to have unity on the front burner, and we have to, in a very organized way, make the changes that are needed to ensure that we are on one page and that we can confront the PPP on the one hand and simultaneously strengthen the party on the other.
Very well. Let me turn you hinted at that statement or the rantings of Jagdeo over the holiday. As some would say, Jagdeo came swinging at you in terms of your popularity and quote unquote lack of experience and matters like that. What interest is it to Jagdeo about what happens in the PNC and Aubrey Norton as leader of the PNC?
Well, first of all, it was evident to me from the inception that they're uncomfortable with me as leader of the PNCR. I think they know that they wouldn't get a free pass. They know my intention is to be on the ground and to work. And they know fully well that I will expose them. For instance, Jagdeo, who I have described as a demon, and I did that not because I want to categorize him, but because everything he does smacks demonic behavior. And so what I did is to respond to his hypocrisy. First of all, he tried to suggest that the Congress, 36% of the people turned up to vote at the Congress. Excuse me. No, that was misplaced. He used 3,000 as the figure. But what he did is he didn't recognize, or he didn't want to recognize, that Vincent Alexander never said 3,000 persons will be delegates. He says it can be in the vicinity of 3,000. It turned out after the accreditation process that there was 1,000 plus persons. When the calculation was done, it amounted to an 85% turnout. And so I thought he was trying to fudge the numbers to reduce the impact of the People's National Congress reform. He then suggested that more people should have voted because they were voting virtually, when he knew full well that voting was in person, except for PNC members in the North American region. And he knew full well that voting was in person because his regime, his corrupt, divisive regime, saw one of our party comrades, the picture of that person voting at Congress Place on Saturday. And by Monday morning, they refused to pay her and they withdrew her contract. And this is for cleaning. It's not no sensitive job. You understand that they have to worry. But it is just in their nature to crucify anybody who they think oppose them in any fashion. And so they took away the contract. And so, again, when he talked about the impact of the Congress, by suggesting that people voted virtually and the fact that they didn't vote meant something, I had to point that out to him. And point out to him that people vote in person and that about 85% of the delegates voted. But most importantly, he tried to talk about popularity in election. And I said to him, you have no democratic right to talk about election. In the PPP, you do not allow democracy. I said, you yourself, you were handpicked by Janet Jagan. No process of election took you to, so you have no moral right to speak about elections. And so I responded to him in that regard. But I felt that the sole focus wasn't me, was an attempt to shift the focus away from them butchering the Constitution to remove or to amend Article 22 so that they can thief the oil money. Look, everything here is focused on dismantling the institutions that were put in place to protect our oil resources, to create a free-for-all, so that Jagdeo and his cronies can pillage our treasury. And I wanted to bring that out because he was seeking to shift away from the reality. I pointed out also the timings of the charging of Winston Jordan. They want to send a signal that Winston committed some crime because they know they are trying to dismantle a very good mechanism that was put in place by former Finance Minister Winston Jordan. And so they charge him at this time, and when they go to court, to Parliament, they'll be able to talk garbage. But the fact of the matter is, Winston Jordan, as Finance Minister, they put together with the legal people a bill which became law that creates a wide oversight committee that would have prohibited us when we're in government and them now that they're in government from squandering the funds. And Jagdeo doesn't like the idea of checks and balances and people not allowing him to operate as if he's a god. And in his demonic ways, he's proceeding to dismantle that. And what is interesting is not the president that made the pronouncement on this. It's President 1, not President 2. It is Jagdeo who made the announcement. So it is a careful plot to browbeat people so that they can open the doors to be able to access our resources and to squander them. So that to me had to be responded to, because the Guyanese people must know that this amendment is not an amendment that is in the interest of the people of Guyana. It is an amendment to create the conditions for the PPP elite to thief. That is the reality.
But it's an amendment that is likely to be passed, given what's happening in the National Assembly. Is there any other route being considered to, as we say, put a spoke in the wheel of this amendment?
Look, the government has the majority. And unless they go to good reasoning, they will pass it. But we have got to give them hell, including mobilizing the international community against them. Now, let's assume that they want to pass the bill. At minimum, it should have gone to a select committee so that there could be more views, the public could be invited to deal with it, etc. But they are only interested in putting their hands on the oil money. And so we have got to mobilize our people, the international community, civil society, and take on the People's Progressive Party on this issue. That even if they pass it, they will have to seriously consider relooking what they are doing. It is so obvious that they are putting a machinery in place to be able to thief. And I believe we will get the message out and in due time they will have to pull back on this matter.
Let's hope so indeed. Following your victory, a number of persons have issued congratulatory statements, including the ambassador to the U.S., Sarah Ann Lynch. Immediately after the elections, the declarations and continuing, persons have been calling for her removal from Guyana because they believe that she had a hand in effecting regime change. This very individual has expressed the interest of working with you as leader of the PNC in terms of, I think she said, common interests of Guyanese and U.S. citizens. What's your position on the removal of Sarah Ann Lynch as ambassador and working with her?
Well, first of all, I don't know that she expressed an interest in working with me. An ambassador is a representative of the government of the United States. Sarah Ann Lynch, while the Trump was in place, represented the U.S. interests as they perceive it. Now, we were totally opposed to it, and we continue to be opposed to how it was handled. But at present, we're seeing foreign policy changes in the United States. We know, for instance, that her term will come to an end. And I believe that as sensible political people, we should not state to a State Department that is clearly signaling changes that we're not going to meet with your rep. We will meet with the rep. We will identify and make clear the disagreements we have, and we will point the new direction that relationship between the PNCR and the United States should go. And I believe that that makes political sense. I also must point out that I see it not as an endorsement of Aubrey Norton. I see it as the United States acknowledging that the process in the PNCR was transparent, free, fair, and democratic, and that they are in large measure embracing a democratic approach. I know for a fact that it is very difficult for them to continue to embrace the PPP because it is evident to all that the PPP does not embrace democracy. Everything that the PPP is doing could be considered anti-democratic. And therefore, at this stage, I don't believe there can be a confluence of interests between the People's Progressive Party and the United States. The United States at present promoting democratic values, etc., and at the same time watching the PPP remove Article 22. They would have observed that they are not putting the relevant commissions in place. They are violating the Constitution in relation to the Procurement Commission and just doling out the resources. So by the very, look, the nature of the PPP under Jack Day and Irfan Ali is that it has become a party of hustlers. And so no principle matters except we want to get rich. They want to get rich. And so there is a contradiction between democratic principles and the approach of the PPP. And I believe that because of the nature of how the PPP operates, they will find themselves on the wrong side of the democratic divide. They are not democratic. Everything they do could be considered undemocratic, most of it. And therefore, I do not think they can continue to get support from the ADCE countries, because this is the second time around, and it will be evident to all that they are not a democratic apparatus. And we have not here mentioned the method by which Irfan Ali would have come to leadership in the party being handpicked by Jagdeo, but he himself was handpicked, so handpicking is normal. And so the intention is to meet with the United States at the appropriate time and to lay the cards on the table and have a discussion, an approach that will mutually benefit Guyana and the United States of America.
The PPP, a party of hustlers, generally endorsed by the Private Sector Commission. I think you have knocked heads, if I can call it that, with the Private Sector Commission recently. There's some who believe that you should be working, if I can say that loosely, with the PPP. There's some who believe that you ought to take a position that you should be should soften your current stance and try to convince others that they can work with you, and you should be working towards getting crossover votes, as they deemed it. But yet there's that statement attributed to you referring to the PSC as political.
Well,
how do you see the PSC's stance versus your stance, and how do you see the Aubrey Norton as leader of the PNC possibly working with the Private Sector Commission, possibly softening your stance on the PPP?
Well, I don't know that I have to soften a factual comment. I have drawn a distinction between the Private Sector Commission and the private sector. If one looks at the Private Sector Commission, one sees one group keep rotating all the time. First thing, if one looks at the Private Sector Commission, one sees the very characters aligning with the PPP and taking positions in consonance with the PPP. Now, Guyanese should know that the PSC is supposed to be a civil society organization. A civil society organization seeks to promote the interests of that organization. In this case, they are purporting or claiming to represent the private sector. My argument is simple. The vast majority of the private sector, of all ethnic groups, they are not in the Private Sector Commission. And therefore, the Private Sector Commission does not represent the totality of the business community. Once we draw those two distinctions, we can come now to our mode of operation. I said I am disposed to meet with the Private Sector Commission. But in meeting with the Private Sector Commission, I don't have to soften my position. In fact, I would call on them to widen and democratize the commission. And I would be happy if the commission reflects the business community. As it stands, it doesn't. And then there's another argument that needs to be debunked. Increasing crossover votes has nothing to do with the Private Sector Commission, though it will have to do with the private sector. And I believe a lot of people in the private sector would like to have a say. For instance, if you look at what is happening in oil and gas, we could talk what we want about local content. It is that same cabal, that same small group that will benefit. But it is not structured to ensure the wider cross-section of businesses of all ethnic groups benefit. And that must worry Guyanese. Because whenever you concentrate wealth in the hands of the few, and then you put wage increases in the way that this government is doing it, what you do is have a large amount of wealth at the top, but with few people, and widespread poverty in the mass of the society. And we have got to ensure that the private sector serves businesses in the private sector and not a little group that gets richer and richer at the expense of all of us. The resources in this country, they are the resources of the people. And as far as is practically possible, the people should benefit. As things are presently constituted, the private sector commission, in my opinion, has not taken the requisite actions to ensure that private businesses benefit. And so, to me, dealing with crossover vote has to do with doing work in those communities and having a robust education program that will allow those people, all Guyanese, to understand that they are being deprived and that a vote for the PPP is not in the interest of their development. If you look at how they did the flood relief, a small group virtually ended up with billions, and the wide expanse of farmers of all ethnic groups did not get the requisite assistance. And so the PPP cannot claim to have helped the farmers. They have used the resources of Guyana to enrich the few that are close to them, and they have created controversy amongst farmers by handpicking those that they want to give a lot of resources to and giving them, then giving another group some, but depriving a large section of the agriculture community who would have had losses of actual, genuine help. And so we have got to carve the messages and speak to all ethnic groups. For instance, in the indigenous communities, we showed that we were going to teach them to fish so that they can earn a living and develop. Because while we talk about African Guyanese being marginalized, etc., the same thing is true for the indigenous communities. And we have got to meet out to them and to sell them policies and programs that will seek to empower them and allow them to develop, rather than this approach where the PPP goes in with handouts, rather than allowing them to develop the skills to be able to feed themselves and become sustainable villages. Our focus has to be on educating the indigenous communities. We will tell them to take what the PPP has to offer, because it's our resources. But we have to instill in those communities that that approach will not allow you and your children to develop, and that we will carry them in the direction of small businesses, education and training that will allow them to become sustainable villages. I believe that approach will help us to obtain votes rather than some chumminess with the private sector that serves to intensify wealth in a polarized fashion.
And so we come to the important issue of votes. And when you talk votes, you talk elections. We saw the recent selection of Vishnu Prasad, is it? As the chief elections officer at GCOM, despite the fact that his credentials, etc., did not necessarily support that choice. Also, we heard him making utterances to the extent that local government elections may be possible in the new year. Have you set your eyes on what is happening at GCOM, and how do you intend to deal with, first and foremost, Vishnu Prasad as CEO, and secondly, let's say the current electoral role if you're going to go to local government elections in the new year?
Well, first of all, I think we need to emphasize that we need a clean voters list. Elections without a clean voters list will create the conditions for fraud. And we will mobilize locally and internationally to ensure there is a clean voters list. That is the first thing. Secondly, as it relates to the Elections Commission, I've made a number of statements. At the time, I wasn't leader of the party. Now I'm leader of the party. I have to sit with the central executive of the party and discuss this issue. I then have to engage the commissioners, get their perspective, and then fine-tune the plans we have for moving forward. There are three common trends that run through. One, the need for a clean list. Two, the need for a new chairman. And four, the need for the appointment of a professional person who suits the job rather than a person who is not qualified for the job. Neither certified nor qualified.
Thank you. It's now 8 hours 51. That gives us 9 minutes to the 9 o'clock hour, which is program time. I'll give you the opportunity to make any closing statements you want.
I would like, first of all, to thank all of your viewers who supported me, and even those who didn't, while I was running for leader of the People's National Congress Reform. While many might say they played no role since they weren't delegates, I disagree. I believe they played an important role. I believe that public opinion does impact the public, and to the extent that public opinion moved in the direction of supporting me, I think a word of thanks and appreciation to all your viewers, including those who are delegates, those who are members, and those who are supporters of the party. So I want to say a special thank you for them. I want to also, at this stage, say to you that I believe your program has contributed to the education of our people. And sometimes we take for granted the work that people like you do. And so this opportunity is taken to say thank you. It was a great initiative. It continues to impact. And so I wish you and your listening and viewing audience all the best as we look forward to a 2022 in which we represent our people and keep the PPP in check and make them accountable.
Thank you, leader of the PNCR, Mr. Aubrey Norton. Do have a pleasant rest of the day. I myself must thank you for your appearances here. It's always a pleasure having you talk to the people, because like we all know, politicians generally are dependent on the people for their support. And the people themselves are dependent on politicians' guidance. So it's a two-way street. Once again, thank you very much for your appearances. I look forward to having you on the program again. Because of the shortness of time, obviously, there are lots of other ideas, areas I would have liked to go, but we will go there eventually. I understand you're on Dr. Hines' Politics 101 tomorrow, so let me encourage viewers to tune in to Politics 101 with the leader of the PNCR, Mr. Aubrey Norton, right here on KAMSTV tomorrow in the evening time. Mr. Norton, have a good day, and I wish you all the best for the new year. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, viewers, you're still tuned to KAMSTV, BUXTONIAN Morning Time, and we were chatting here with leader of the PNCR, some would say newly minted leader of the PNCR, Mr. Aubrey Norton. You would have had the opportunity to hear some of the things on his mind. As we like to say, we were able to pick his mind. And so you are better informed now as to what you can expect moving forward. There were a couple of voice notes. I'm not sure what those are about, but I will play them and as we wrap up the program.
Why not let the United Nations run the elections in Guyana?
All right, so that's a thought there from one of the voice noters to the United Nations to run elections in Guyana whenever that time comes.
Good morning, Mr. Amsterdam. It's not just the teachers have the expense of making the aids. The teachers send to the parents, and so the parents also have to either send money or buy some of the things for the aids. I have experienced that as a grandparent.
Good, and so you have had inputs into both segments of discussion. One is about the teachers and Satirigal and licensing and the setting the systems and providing the resources necessary instead of talking about licensing teachers so you can control them. Yes, not only teachers bear that burden, parents also bear that burden. Imagine in this year and time, parents will still ask for contributions to paint classrooms and buy toilet tissue and other amenities to schools and so on, right? Good. And people are talking about licensing of teachers. Good. But nevertheless, we have to keep on pushing on. Like the leader of the PNCR said, people have to remain vigilant and they have to remain mobilized. That's the word. And that's important, like I was saying to you this morning. You can have all the leaders you want, but unless you stand in support of those leaders, then the thing is, they may not be able to be as effective as they are. You have to show your numbers, right? Like I like to say, like we like to say, boots on the ground is what matters. And somebody is questioning the suggestions of the United Nations running the elections. Dependent on how you look at it, it can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. Because in some instances, you would expect the United Nations to be impartial. And so push for a clean and fair elections and everything. And in other instances, when the United Nations sets foot on your soil in relation to political matters, they stay there sometimes for too long a time. As we would like to say, they overstay their welcome. So it's something that has to be considered and considered deeply before arriving at that decision. Nevertheless, this is me saying, have a great day. Goodbye. Tune in tomorrow for another program of BUXTONIAN Morning Time and in the evening for Politics 101 with Dr. Hans. Zoe.